Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Mock Report. I'm Brandon.
I am Matt, and we're going to get started right away with some quick hits on how last week went. How'd you do?
Um, well, I didn't bust. I kind of hit on all my rosters, at least moneyed. I think I missed on 3 rosters, but I did okay. Not as good as I wanted to do. You know, everybody wants to be in the big money, but I'm pretty happy that I'm still alive this week. How about you?
I didn't do very good.
No?
In fact, I did pretty poorly. Had a bit of a breakdown this week, didn't I?
Yeah. Who would you say burned you the most? What was the determining factor?
Well, I'm gonna give you sort of both ends of the spectrum. So I went heavy on Tyler Croft, and I did so at the behest of a lot of matchup data and a lot of indicators suggesting that he would have a breakout game to follow up his breakout game against Buffalo. So I stacked him in every single roster. I didn't have a ton of rosters, but I put him in every single roster, and he wasn't very good. But I would have to say the worst selection that I had came on the back of 0 data and 0 matchup suggestions, and that would be Mr. Carlos Hyde playing with a bunk-ass hip against a team that wasn't really terrible against the run, but wasn't really all that great either. And he gave me not even 3 points. What was it, 2.9, 2.4?
I played Hyde in a couple rosters. He kind of burned me and made it so I was a lower cash. But I actually looked at PFF, and he didn't have that terrible of a matchup, but it is the hip.
He wasn't popping, though. Like, there was really... I really just shoved him in. Like, I felt like, oh, this will be it. And it probably could have easily have been Melvin Gordon that I did the same thing to. I was on the fence, and there's probably a little bit more statistical and matchup data that would have pushed me towards Gordon. But I just felt like, Hyde had the touches, Hyde had the production, and Gordon had been a little bit shaky to start the season, and I went with Hyde, and it was wrong. It was very wrong. I was very right. I will defend myself. I was very right on a few picks, namely Dak Prescott, who I shoved in almost every roster, and Mr. Leonard Fournette, who, despite the fact that he really did most of his damage in the last 5 minutes of the game, still came out on top as the RB1 for the week, but wasn't enough, sir. It was not enough.
Well, let's see if we can change it this week. So let's look at the week that was. The week in review, we'll go position by position. We'll talk about like the top 5 players fantasy-wise for that week, and I pulled this off of PFF. So our QBs, number 1 was Watson, who was not in the main slate, so you couldn't play him in the Millie Maker, but he had 5 touchdowns.
Which it's good to mention too, that one of the biggest purposes of us, I shouldn't say the purpose of us filming this, but one of the real goals here is that we are going to win the Millie Maker, and we're going to do so on screen. We're going to do so either yourself or I, or together collectively, or everybody who wants to try to listen to us. But one of the main purposes of this, one of the outer goals here is to take down a Millie Maker.
Change their lives.
Change everything, man. Bring the office to fruition. I just think that needed to be said. I mean, that needed to be recorded in stone,
And maybe in our first video in week 4, which our first video should have been in week 1 or preseason. Yeah. The ones of the ghost videos that
our week
existed.
4 preseason video.
Yeah, pretty much.
Nobody said we had to play by the rules.
No, we play by our own rules, which is the whole thing. We're going to play by our own rules, and we're going to win the Millie. It's going to happen.
Week 11. I'm going to say week 11.
So, second to Watson, you had Dak Prescott, which was your pick.
Money, man, against Green Bay.
Yeah, 3 touchdowns. You know what?
And a rushing touchdown.
Yeah, he had a great game. Next was Carson Wentz, our Ginger Jesus for the Philly Eagles. You had Alex Smith, who seems to be popping up more often than not now. He's like
also not on the main slate.
Yeah, he's a fantasy dud, but this year he seems to be doing not bad.
He's got Pat Mahomes breathing down his back, ready to take his job. So he's decided maybe it's worth shut up. Maybe it's worth slinging the ball downfield a little bit.
Yeah, and then lastly was Cam Newton, who went off 2 weeks in a row, and I thought for sure it was not going to happen, mostly because I was like all up in that media hype where he badmouthed the female and thought he was going to have a terrible game, but I was wrong. He didn't hit Funchess like he did the previous game, but
Funchess got a touchdown, did he not?
yeah, but not this like the same dominance that they had in week 5 or week 4.
I'd be more likely to trust Cam Newton's skill than Funchess's skill. So if you're going to play anybody, I'd play Newton. He's a good quarterback. I mean, he's been a legitimate top 5 quarterback the last 4 or 5 years. So, I mean, he's been off to a slow start, but he seems to be coming into his own, and it doesn't seem to matter who they're playing now. I think he can keep it rolling.
Is there anyone on that list of 5, Watson, Prescott, Wentz, Smith, and Newton, that you think are going to flake out this week? Just
any of them? I mean, it's such a crazy list of 5. Think about the names you just listed off. Watson, who's a rookie, came out of Clemson. Yeah, he's a national championship winner, but he's a rookie. So how many rookies in the last 10 years can you name? Say like they're leading the league in touchdowns.
He had 2 4+ TD games in a row. But you also have Wentz and Newton that aren't on the main slate this week, the Thursday nighter. So they're playing each other.
Yeah, and
Dak Prescott's on a bye.
If you want me to pick one of those gentlemen to have sort of a dud day, I'm shamefully going to say it's probably going to be Carson Wentz against Carolina. I think he's probably playing a little bit higher than his, I don't want to say pay grade, but he's probably the last few games played a little bit better on paper than he has on the field. He's had multiple touchdowns. Last game was a great game, came against a pretty weak Arizona secondary, and he got off to a great start. I think he's going to be challenged a little bit more versus Carolina.
Yes.
He's going to need his line to protect him because it is a good defense, but I don't think he's going to have the kind of throwing room that he had against Arizona because the secondary in Carolina is going to be able to lock down the center of the field a little bit better, and he's going to be challenged.
True enough. So we'll move on to the wide receivers here. And here's a guy that I pegged on 2 rosters, but I should have had more exposure to him. Was A.J. Green at the top of the list with 1 touchdown, 189 yards, and 7 receptions, followed by Hopkins. 3 touchdowns for 52 yards and 4 receptions, so that's a pretty good...
A little bit of an outlier. I don't think I'm going to expect too many 3-touchdown games.
No. Devontae Adams, 1 touchdown, 66 yards, 7 receptions. T.Y. Hilton had 1 touchdown, 177 yards, and 7 receptions. And then you had Will Fuller, who had 2 touchdowns and 57 yards. You know what I'd like to highlight here? Between Hopkins and Fuller, they had 109 yards and 5 touchdowns between both of them.
Yeah, it's a bit outrageous. I don't think that can be repeated, but as long as Watson continues to play at the level that he's playing, I would continue to start those receivers because apparently there's touchdowns to go around in an offense you didn't really expect it to be coming from. They do have a pretty good schedule for the rest of the way. It's not the best, but it is pretty solid. And if they're producing at this rate, I mean, I'd still play them while you can. Fuller's price is going to be going up. Hopkins is already a top-tier wide receiver, but his price is going to be rising too. Watkins, I think at this point, if he even just kind of averages out to where he's been so far, he's underpriced right now.
Hopkins?
But he won't be. Sorry, Watson.
No.
Hopkins is a little underpriced, but his price is rising, especially after last game. You'll see that effect next week. But I'd say Watson is probably, for the next couple weeks, going to remain underpriced on most of the DFS sites, but it's going to catch up to him if he keeps this up. So we're gonna have a couple more weeks of decent bargain pricing, and then he's going to be up there with the top 3.
Okay, so out of the 4 people that aren't AJ Green, who's on a bye this week, who's most likely to go off? My pick is probably Devontae Adams. I think that actually historically against Minnesota, Randall Cobb tends to struggle, but Jordy Nelson and Devontae Adams tend to light them up. So,
and you know what, Devontae Adams seems to be has quickly become the 1B to Jordy Nelson's 1A. It doesn't seem like, there's so much offense to go around in Green Bay that it's almost like it doesn't matter which one you choose, because Jordy Nelson's going to have his 6 catches, 60 yards, and a touchdown sort of floor. And then Devontae Adams is going to have, it seems like his games either go 3 catches, 100 yards, and a touchdown, or 8 catches, 40 yards, and a touchdown. And they average out to about the same. So Green Bay, great offense. Devontae Adams, great wide receiver. I can't believe how he bounced back from that knockout punch. My God, I thought he was dead.
Yeah,
but apparently
mouth guard went flying, everything. So,
I'm sure that was his soul.
Yeah, might have been, which is why Aaron Rodgers felt like he needed to punch a soul back into him to win the game with the same play back to back. I don't know. Moving on to the running backs, you had Fournette topping it out with 2 touchdowns, 181 rushing yards. You had Melvin Gordon, 2 touchdowns. There were 2 receiving touchdowns, actually, but he had 105 yards rushing. You had McKinnon. He had 1 touchdown, 95 yards. You had Jones, who I kind of mentioned.
Did I take McKinnon?
No.
Is that my play?
No.
I said Diggs, right?
Yep, we're going to look at that in the next video, too. So we had Aaron Jones, who had 1 touchdown, 125 yards. And then we had a Javaris Allen, or Buck Allen, at 1 touchdown, 73 yards. I've been, jamming...
How do you pronounce his first name there?
I don't know, something Javarius.
Everybody shies away that you call him Buck Allen because nobody wants to say it.
Yeah. I don't know, I'd probably mess it up more.
I'm going to say it's Javorius.
I'm going to mess it up more often than not, so...
Who names their kid Javorius? I like the guy. Honestly, I like the guy, but Javorius?
Buck Allen sounds so much easier. It's
Javorius Allen, please.
It's a sports name, Buck Allen. So, Fournette is a guy that I've been playing every week in a lot of rosters. He's been pretty consistent for me. I've been shying away from Melvin Gordon. McKinnon was not on my radar. I was almost ready to plug in... Latavius Murray. That's he was going to get vulture some touchdowns in the red zone. Excuse me. I did have Aaron Jones, and I was nowhere near Allen. How about yourself?
So I showed you my rosters. I went really narrow on ownership, so I was pretty much across the board. 3 running backs. I had Fournette, Hyde, and Ezekiel Elliott. Zeke was average. Fournette was fantastic. Hyde was... We won't talk about Hyde, so we'll move along in that respect. But I think I'm going to be taking more or less that strategy moving forward. It's sort of like a cluster dart. Not really a dart throw, but I feel like if I keep my... We're not playing, at least I'm not playing a widespread of rosters, so I'm going to keep it pretty narrow going forward, and I'm going to trust the matchup data, I'm going to trust the analysis data, and I'm going to try to shy away from my own opinion when it's unfounded. I'm going to trust my opinion when it has some backing to it. But I made the mistake. My biggest mistake this week was probably Baldwin and Wilson's stack, which really had no reason to exist, and I just sort of manufactured it in my mind. Didn't work out.
See, I'm the complete opposite with you. I don't play that many rosters yet because I don't have the cash flow yet. But in the rosters that I do, I like to cover my bases. If I saw specific matchups that I wanted to exploit, I'll plug them into rosters in various fashions. But for the most part, I like to have a stack spread across based on favorable matchups that I find. So I'm pretty much spread eagle. Like one roster is like one stack with a couple other people. Yeah, and spread eagle. And then a couple other rosters are completely different. So you and me kind of have 2 different strategies here. You're going pretty narrow with a cluster pick, and I like to do pretty much all over the board and just cover my bases and hope I hit even just one. Maybe not all of them.
I'm not even really sure which way is better, or if either one is better than the other.
I assume we'll find out.
Yeah, we probably will. And honestly, I would be more inclined to do a much bigger spread and have a much lower exposure to players. Like I would keep it under 30 or 40% if I was fielding like 100 or even maybe like 50 rosters where, if I'm right, I'm going to still be pretty right. My thinking, whether, and I'm not sure if it's right or wrong in this, I could probably, analyze the winning rosters and sort of how I've done when I've had narrow ownerships. But my thinking is that most of the time, if you have a few rosters and you have a spread of players and low ownership, you're going to be right on some players. But if you don't have a large percentage of ownership on those players that you're correct on, you're really working just to kind of break even. You're just looking for a push. And there's a chance you might line up and get all the right guys on one roster together and it goes off. But if you're so spread out, then it sort of limits your research, right? Like if you're running 6 or 10 rosters and your research indicates, X number of players are favorable in matchups and favorable in ownership, favorable in salary. If you don't sort of narrow down to that clump of players, if you spread out because you don't want to have high exposure, you're probably going to have some of them, but you're not going to have all of them if they do go off and your analysis is correct. So I don't know if it's the right approach, at least right now, but I've kind of taken the all or nothing strategy where if the research is right and the analysis is right, it's going to be really right. And if it's wrong, then, I don't know if I'm that much worse off than I would have been otherwise.
I'm not opposed to adjusting my strategy, but I know for this week I am going very, very spread out over. I have 6 to 8 rosters, I think, and I feature like
you showed me, yeah. It is
like open. I have a different quarterback in every roster, and with a stack, and then I kind of put a lot of crossovers in between those for people that I think are going to be good scoring. So there is somewhat of a cluster aspect, but as far as stacks, I don't stack in this like the same stack in each roster.
I can safely say I may have 70 to 100% Drew Brees this week.
Yeah, I'm going to get into that one, don't worry. We'll move on to tight ends. And who saw this coming? I think you did. Ed Dixon?
You know what? I would say that I saw it coming, but can you see something coming if you do nothing about it and don't act upon it and don't roster him in a single roster?
No, and if he has 5 receptions and 175 yards...
What is that average? That's like ridiculous, too.
I know.
It's like 27 yards. Nobody does that.
No. So he was followed by Fells, who got 2 touchdowns with 24 yards, so polar opposite. Instead of having no touchdowns.
That's the new Mercedes Lewis. I wouldn't expect that to happen again.
I'm playing Mercedes Lewis in one of my rosters.
Don't do that to yourself. Just stop.
No, I'm going to. I looked at the matchup. I think he's going to have a game. And then you had Kittle with 1 touchdown, 83. I was on him at the start of the week, came off him.
Are you going to say it?
No, I'm not going to say it. Don't worry.
You can say it. I don't care.
I was convinced by somebody to not put Kittle in because I made a extreme error and had Aldrick Robinson in my roster, and you basically advised me not to put Kittle and Robinson in the same roster, and I pulled Kittle out, and then Robinson didn't play until garbage time and got like maybe 1 reception for like 5 yards. So my mistake, but you took me off Kittle, but ultimately my fault because I had a player that shouldn't have been in a roster in about 3 rosters, so he kind of burned me there, but I still managed to cash on some of those because I had some good players. So
in my defense, I didn't specifically say come off Kittle. I just said
that's what I was saying.
One of them.
No, exactly. That's what I stated.
Still, dick move though. Dick move.
Even more of a dick move. You didn't tell me to take Robinson out of my lineup.
I was driving in my car. We've been through this.
Anyways, so followed from Kittle, we had Brait. He had 1 touchdown, 68, and that's against New England Patriots, right?
Out on the main slate, but still, you know what? Braid's been producing for the last couple of years, and they
Yeah,
just drafted in the first round OJ, and he's gotten like 2 catches the whole season. Braid's been commanding that position so far.
He's been great.
He's been great.
And then followed by Zach Ertz, who seems to be on the radar pretty much every week. He's one of those premier tight ends so far. He's doing pretty good. So he had 1 touchdown, 61 yards.
Yeah, my favorite thing is the last video I filmed. I said Zach Ertz doesn't catch touchdowns; he just makes catches, and then he goes and catches a touchdown.
Yeah,
but, you know, he's one of those guys that just gets targeted like crazy. And I actually, again, kind of considered going to Zach Ertz this past week. I thought he's a great play. Jeffrey's going to get locked down by Pat Peterson, and that happened. And Ertz was, I wouldn't say necessarily the go-to guy. I think Wentz really spread the ball around effectively, but Ertz produced at the consistent level that he's done so all season. I mean, 15 points is kind of like his floor now, which for a tight end these days seems to be pretty rock solid, with Gronk being broken every other.
It's pretty thin at tight end, actually, when it comes to...
It's really thin. It's like you got to throw a dart into that clump of guys, because one of them's going to go off and you don't have any idea who. Even Gronk right now, like when he's playing, he has been healthy, fully healthy. He's had 1 really good game. He's had a couple good-ish games, and then he's had some duds out there too. So, I mean, if you want to pay the premium for him, you're really kind of risking it now.
Is Dixon a thing, or was that a one-off?
Dixon might be a thing. He's always been a pretty effective pass catcher. As those receivers become a little healthier, with Benjamin kind of getting back to healthiness and Funchess sort of, I don't want to say breaking out, but Funchess being at least effective, Dixon could be a thing, because Olsen was definitely a thing for a long time. He's not as good as Olsen, but there's that's like 80 catches a year that are up for grabs right now. And so far, neither of those receivers are really snagging that much more of a target share. And Dixon averaged 27 yards a catch last game, but he could still probably put up 5 or 6 catches and 60, 70 yards, maybe, a coin flip on a touchdown a week. But we'll have to see. I don't know. Like, I would love to say that he's going to be a thing, but he might just be a flash in the pan. I'm not sure.
So we'll move on to defense. We do this little feature on our show now. We call it Pick a Pick 6, where we have to pick a pick 6, and I'm not sure.
Was I right? I think I was right. No, I wasn't right. I said Jets.
Yeah, you said the Jets. I
had a bunch
Philly.
I was so good on my defenses this week, though. I said Baltimore. I said Jets. Didn't do that great, but I was also like Baltimore, Jacksonville, Jets, and I had one other one. I can't remember which one. I think San Diego or something like that. But it was pretty solid. Oh, Miami. I love Miami this week too.
So for defense and special teams, the leaders were Jacksonville with 2 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, and I don't know what the fuck's wrong with Ben Roethlisberger, but it was beautiful.
Well, nothing's wrong with him. He's playing the best defense in the league.
Then you had Miami. They had 7 sacks, 1 TD. You had Baltimore with a TD, and then you had Green Bay with a TD. So I picked Philly, you picked Jets. Neither of us hit, so we're going to try that again this week. We'll get into that later. So let's just quickly skim through some injuries here. On Atlanta, you have...
Bad week, man. Bad week. Sucks to be a Giant.
Yeah, I can't wait to get to that part. So Jones and Sanu are both questionable. Sanu's probably not going to play, which means Gabriel's kind of maybe see a little bit more action. Jones is probably going to play. Then you have...
I'm actually going to bet you both will play.
They could. Then you have on Buffalo, not like it matters, it's a bye week, but you do have Jordan Matthews and Charles Clay on the injury report. You have Funchess, who's questionable. You have Ty Montgomery and Jordy are both questionable, and it looks like Ty Montgomery's going to play because he's in full practice with broken ribs.
They're not sure. It's easy to practice with broken ribs. It's harder to play.
It'll be flak jacket, maybe a bit more limited touches too.
I don't know. I've never broken ribs. Have you?
Yes.
You
can't breathe. It's like constriction.
It hurts a little bit, right?
A lot of it.
Yeah, I think he's not going to play.
So then we have Kelsey. He's got a conky or concussion-like symptoms, he's probably going to play. If he doesn't, look to kind of move anywhere else in that offense because he's been lighting it up the last couple of weeks.
Who's that?
Kelsey.
Oh, he'll play.
Yeah, most likely. And moving on to Miami, you have Devontae Parker. He's got a questionable tag. Huh?
You meant Kelsey, right?
Yeah, whatever. Same shit. Kelsey. How I text it to you. Anyways, Devontae Parker in Miami. You have Diggs with a questionable tag, and Bradford, who's probably not going to play, so we're probably going to see Case Keenum.
Bradford will not play. Diggs swears he's going to play.
Diggs said he was going to play. Just like Brady, who's got a questionable tag.
He will play.
He said he's going to play. You have Gronk out with a thigh, but questionable. Most likely. Yeah, he's going to play. And then you have the New York Midgets. Without Odell and Marshall, who are out for the year with ankles. And then you have Sterling Shepard, who's questionable with an ankle.
Boot.
Yeah, he's in a walking
boot. He's not playing.
He's not playing. So I'd like to make a comment on this. Does it make sense to use a waiver pick on someone like Roger Lewis? Because he's not for the next 2 weeks, because this week they got Denver, and then the following week, who do they have? It's Seattle. So he's going to be seeing Sherman. So for 2 weeks, the Giants are going to go into the bye 0-7. But
I think worth a roster pick, like you said. I don't know if he's worth a start. Right
him or Shepard. If Shepard if he heals up, he'd be a solid play considering he's good. Like Eli Manning throws 30+ times per game.
Right.
Consistent. He's in the top. He's in the top like 7 or top 5 of quarterbacks throwing this year. So
he's completing 53% though.
Yeah, but still, it's nice to have the volume there if you're going to take a budget.
65, and last year he was 68, so he's really bad this year.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, if you have a free roster spot, maybe a dead wideout or flex spot, it might be worth having someone like Sterling Shepard or Roger Lewis in your lineup just to kind of, throw it out there if there's nothing else available.
Shepard should be owned. I haven't looked at it, but Shepard's probably owned in a lot
Shepard's
of leagues.
Owned even in 10-team leagues. Like, he's generally...
Yeah, he's probably owned. I mean, you can look at Lewis. I tend to be a guy that I draft and I start talent. And Lewis doesn't have much. No offense, but he doesn't. And so even a guy who's being thrust into the first wide receiver position on a bad team, I mean... With
a bad quarterback?
Yeah, like a blind squirrel's going to find a nut once in a while, but I don't see this guy really winning you a league. You're probably... it depends. If you're in a league that has, waiver priority, at this point, if you can get Jerick McKinnon, if you can get... I'm not even really sure. If you can get Orleans Darkwa, if you can get Aaron Jones, probably a little too late for some of those guys, but if you can get any of them, I'd take them ahead of Lewis. If there's really nothing left out there and he's sitting there on the waiver wire, yeah, go for him. He's going to get volume. But then again, I think Evan Engram is probably a better pickup at this point, and he might be available on 20 or 30% of the leagues. I don't know, but
you're gonna check down to him every time.
He's probably a better target to go to.
Moving on, we have Forte, who's questionable, and we have Powell, who's questionable. His toe's retired, but Powell's questionable too.
Toe. I've actually had turf toe. He's not going to play this year.
Yeesh. Yeah, well, it's good for anybody who has Bilal Powell, but maybe not this week because he does have the questionable tag. So, then you have Derek Carr, who's practicing with a broken back.
He's going to play.
I know, but I don't
Romo
know.
2.0.
Yeah, and then he'll go out for the year. And then you have Smallwood for the Eagles. Probably not going to play. He didn't practice on today, which is Wednesday, so likely not going to play. Then you have Deshaun Jackson with a questionable. He says he's going to play.
I love this matchup. I need this man to play because I love this matchup.
I have him. He's in my rosters. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Then you have a nice thing for the anybody playing the Redskins is Josh Norman's out.
Norman is out.
It could trickle down and open up a lot of things in the field because of coverage issues. So Washington has a decent D this year, but will they be the same without Norman?
Well, they've got a decent pass rush, right? So you really want to play the angles of if you've got a quarterback with a solid offensive line. Like, I love Carson Wentz against Washington this year. He's going to probably, in their second game, he's probably going to light it up. But that's because, Eagles have a great offensive line. A little bit weird that Derek Carr had such a bad game against them because he does have one of the better offensive lines as well. I'm looking forward to the Dak Prescott game as well. But, yeah, I think it's hard to say because the offensive line in San Fran has been average to good-ish. And the play from Brian Hoyer has been so sporadic. But if you wanted to throw, and I'm going to concede to you on this one, if you want to throw like a dart at Kittle, or if you want to throw a dart at Pierre Garçon, or even like Marquez Wilson this week, it's probably worth it because with Norman out and a game that's probably going to be high scoring and go for the over, those guys are going to have to put up points. Hyde's likely to be limited if he does play, and Matt Breida is an average to below average back. So it's going to come down to the passing on both of these teams. It's worth getting into this. This could be a shootout if the weather's good.
I think Matt Breida's worth a roster slot on a lot of different rosters, specifically because Hyde has had 9 different injuries in the 3 years he's played.
Yeah, this is his 4th year, I think. 2013, 14.
Yeah, so he's had 9 separate injuries, which means he's no Frank Gore. He's not very durable. So you could have a roster spot just for Breida to pick up the pieces if Hyde's not doing.
Breida might get some touches. My problem is I don't trust Breida to be good just because Hyde's hurt. Right, I don't.
But if you got nothing else, if you're like, even if you wanted to draft Breida as a handcuff type thing, right? If you know that Hyde's gonna go out or something, and then you have that handcuff in hand with Breida, just for not everybody's gonna have their ideal matchups. So if you have them on your roster in a bench slot and you can plug them in a situation where Hyde takes.
You picked up Breida, didn't you?
Maybe.
Nailed it.
Okay, so we'll move past our waiver wire pickups now, since Cat's out of the bag and injuries, and we're going to move on to the last segment of this video, and we are going to go through each position, and we are going to give a must-own player for this week.
Are we doing we're doing our winning picks plus a must own, or is
no,
that
no,
not this?
This we're gonna do it. We're gonna do our picks in a separate video. So this pick we're just gonna go that five things, like 5 players / 4 players in a defense that you should own this week, because they're pretty chalky or whatever you think, or if you think they're gonna go off. Start with QB. I'm saying Drew Brees. I know you're gonna.
Drew Brees, baby. You got to do it.
Like I texted you early.
Coming out of a yeah, I'll let you do it. I'll let you do it.
Yeah, like Jake Seeley put it on Roto Experts that since 2008, coming off a bye, playing in a dome, he's thrown for an average of 360 plus yards. He's had 3+ touchdowns, almost 4 touchdowns, and 27 completions. So he is the man to own in this week.
What, just to say something, just so I'm not sort of like doubling up. I'm going to say Mr. Phillip Rivers has a great week this week as well.
I thought he was going to have a week last week, and he burned me.
He didn't have a bad week.
No, he didn't, but he did. I thought he was going to go off.
Well, he might. You know what? He might do it this week. Just saying. He's got a good matchup against Oakland. Oakland, not a great secondary. He is on the road, which I tend to shy away from sometimes. But if Carr does play, this could be a shootout, and I think he's going to have a good game.
How about your running back? Who's your running back pick of the week?
I'm going to keep it pretty simple, and I'm going to say my boy Leonard Fournette doubles up.
He's been lighting up all year.
Yeah, they're going to have to lean on him again. Rams, not the best, not the worst, but when you are pretty much the only offensive player on your team and you're producing at a good rate, I mean, I like him just for touchdowns alone. He might get another 2.
I'm going to go with Devontae Freeman. I think he's going to see a lot of action this week. So he is going to be one of my premier running backs. I think even if Matt Ryan's throwing, Devontae Freeman could be the recipient of a couple of those throws.
That's good. A name to mention too, I won't make this my guy, but a name to mention too is Mark Ingram. With the trade for AP going to Cardinals, he's got an extra couple touches. He's in probably what's going to be a shootout game, but what I love about Mark Ingram is he's catching passes like he's never caught passes before. It started last year, and now it's culminating into 4 or 5 a game. This is a guy that they said they had stone hands. He would never catch passes, and now he's lighting it up.
It's the same thing as Kamara. Kamara's stock is shot through the roof now that there's only 2 backs instead of 3 backs, and Kamara is your traditional pass receiving back. I don't know how much I'm going to play of either of those backs just because I don't like playing Ingram, but I'm probably going to play them in at least one roster.
He could have, either of them could go off. It's going to come down to game flow. If New Orleans is up early, or if they are keeping a solid lead, Ingram's going to continue to get he's going to continue to get touches, and it really comes down to do they have a 3 and goal or something like that. Like, he's going to get those goal line touches if they present themselves. But the thing about Kamara, and you said earlier today to me that you weren't really buying the hype on Kamara. He's a really talented back. I know he's a rookie, but he's a really talented receiving back who is in a perfect offense for what he does. And if you look at historically the way Sean Payton's defense or offenses have worked and the way Drew Brees has worked, especially in the hurry-up offenses and the 2-minute drills and when they're coming from behind, that position on New Orleans is just a funnel for catches. And we're talking like Kamara could conceivably have 5 or 6 catches in one single touchdown drive and be the one that catches that touchdown. So it's going to come down to game flow, and I'll concede he might have a dud, but it's going to come down to game flow. But this guy could go off for 8 catches and 100 total yards and a touchdown.
Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that I don't like Kamara. He's a great back. He is a pass receiving back through and through. I'm just saying that I'm not going to hype him up as much as I think that the DFS community is going to be. I'm going to say that he's probably going to be upwards of 24% ownership at his price.
Wow. Really?
Yeah,
have you checked up on it? Is there any indication for that right now?
Anybody using FanShare? Yes, there's tons of tags on him. He is so hyped. He is just hyped to fuck right now. So that's
with
why
the
I'm
Peterson
going
trade, though, that makes sense, right? Because there's extra touches.
Don't believe me. Don't get me wrong. I get it, but I'm gonna pivot off Kamara and try and take a different back for ownership reasons. That's just me. So moving on to wide receiver, I got Thielen. That's who I'm playing. I know Diggs, has a lot of potential versus Green Bay, but I think that Thielen's going to be the guy because Diggs is dealing with that groin injury. He could re-injure it or stress it. Might be a little bit limited, but probably not because of Stephon Diggs. But anyways, that's who I'm going with. I'm going with Thielen as my wideout.
Michael Thomas, sir. This is a guy who's been meddling with that 6 catch, 80-yard sort of That's where he's been averaging through the season. He's a big-bodied receiver. He's on a great offense. He's playing in a game that's probably going to have upwards of 50 to 55 total points. This guy's got 2 touchdowns written all over him. I love him this week.
What about if Willie Snead plays?
Who cares about Willie Snead? Who the fuck is that?
He's blonde.
I don't know. Is Willie Snead going to play? Is he going to play? I don't know.
Still dealing with a hamstring, so I don't know.
He might show up.
How about tight end? I got Ben Watson.
You know what? I'm just going to say Zach Ertz. Like, Zach Ertz is the man. He's been really consistent. He's had solid games throughout. I think with everything that in this game, he's probably going to be the best option to throw to.
And for my defense, I'm going to pick on the lowly New York Midgets, and I'm going to pick the Denver team with Von Miller with a pass rush. You know what? I just see them eating the Giants alive because they can't run it and they can't catch it anymore. So they're just screwed.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm going to take Baltimore at home. They're up against Chicago. I watched the game I watched the game with Mitchell Trubisky. I mean, hats off. The kid's probably going to be a good quarterback, but he's still coming into his own right now. He wasn't terribly effective. I mean, he was efficient, but not effective. I just don't see him pulling this one out. Baltimore's been playing really good this year. Playing at home, that's a tough game no matter what. And I don't think Trubisky has his best day today.
Well, that's it for the Fantasy Talk waiver wire injuries and week in review. So
in retrospect, I know we spoke about this too, but we should really do our waiver wires on like a Tuesday.
That's what I was going to say. We're going to swap over to probably a Tuesday nighter for this talk at least, and then our picks maybe later. But if you've stuck with us this long, please check us out on Twitter. We are at Mock Reports. Subscribe to our channel. We're hoping to have content every week. Not even hoping. We are going to have content every week. And the more likes we get, the more we can justify to our wives that this is worth doing.
You look really good today.
Thanks. You too.
Thank you.